Steve Harvey was in the middle of asking a Family Feud question when his producer did something that had never happened in the show's history. The producer walked onto the stage during filming and handed Steve a phone. What Steve heard on that call made him drop his question cards and left everyone in the studio, including Steve himself, in tears. It was Tuesday, March 12, 2024, at the Family Feud studio in Atlanta. The atmosphere was electric, as always, with two families competing for the grand prize. The Mitchell family from Texas was facing off against the Garcia family from Florida. Everything seemed routine, until one moment changed not just the game, but everyone's understanding of what sacrifice really means. The Mitchell family was doing well. They had just won the second round and were feeling confident. The family consisted of Marcus Mitchell, a 42-year-old construction worker, his mother Dorothy, his brother James, his sister Patricia, and his wife Angela. Angela Mitchell, 38, was at the far end of the family line, trying to keep her composure. But anyone watching closely could see her checking her phone between questions, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Steve noticed it too. He'd been doing this long enough to recognize when someone's mind was elsewhere. During the commercial break, he walked over to Angela. "You all right, sweetheart?" he asked quietly. "You seem like you got something heavy on your mind." Angela forced a brighter smile. "I'm fine, Mr. Harvey. Just, today's a special day. That's all." "Special how?" Steve asked, genuinely curious. "It's my daughter's 10th birthday," Angela said, her voice catching slightly. "And her daddy. He's deployed. Afghanistan. He's missing it. For the 3rd year in a row." Steve's expression softened. He'd interviewed enough military families to know that pain. "How long has he been gone this time?" 14 months, Angela replied, dabbing at her eyes carefully to not smudge her makeup. "But who's counting, right?" She tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. "Listen," Steve said, putting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your husband's a hero, and so are you, holding it down at home. That little girl is lucky to have parents like y'all." Angela nodded, unable to speak. The stage manager called for places, and Steve returned to his position. But something about Angela's sadness stayed with him as they resumed taping. The game continued, and the Mitchell family was on a roll. They made it to the final fast money round, and Angela was chosen to go first. As she stood at the podium, Steve could see her taking deep breaths, trying to focus. "All right, Angela," Steve said warmly. "You got 20 seconds to answer 5 questions. You ready?" Angela nodded, gripping the podium edges. "Ready as I'll ever be." 20 seconds on the clock," Steve announced. "Here we go. Name something people do when they miss someone." Angela's answer was immediate and raw. "Cry themselves to sleep." The audience went quiet for a moment. Steve felt the emotional weight of her answer but kept going. "Name a holiday that's hardest to celebrate alone." "Christmas," Angela whispered, then louder. "Christmas." "Number of months that feel like forever." 14, Angela said without hesitation. Steve paused for just a fraction of a second, recognizing she'd just given the exact number of months her husband had been deployed. He continued, "Name something a child wishes for." "Their daddy to come home." Angela's voice cracked. "Name something that makes you strong." "Love," Angela said, tears now flowing freely. "Love makes you strong." The buzzer sounded and the audience applauded, but it was subdued, respectful. Everyone could feel the weight of Angela's answers. They weren't trying to win a game show. They were windows into her soul. Steve walked over to Angela with a handkerchief. "You did good, baby girl. You did real good." As they were setting up for Marcus to take his turn at Fast Money, something unprecedented happened. Steve's executive producer, Marcus Freeman, walked onto the stage during active filming. This had never happened in all Steve's years hosting the show. Freeman was carrying a phone, and his face was urgent but unreadable. "Steve," Freeman said, loud enough for his mic to pick up, "you need to take this call. Right now." Steve looked confused. "Man, we're in the middle of taping. Can't this wait?" "No," Freeman said firmly. It absolutely cannot wait. Trust me. Steve took the phone, completely bewildered. The audience was murmuring, wondering what was happening. Even the other producers looked confused. This wasn't planned. Hello? Steve said into the phone. The voice on the other end was crackling with distance but clear. Mr. Harvey, this is Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, calling from Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Steve's eyes widened. He looked immediately at Angela, who had gone rigid. Yes, sir? Mr. Harvey, I understand you have Angela Mitchell on your show right now. Is that correct? Yes, sir. She's right here, Steve said, his voice careful. Mr. Harvey, I'm calling about Staff Sergeant David Mitchell. There's been an incident. Angela must have seen something in Steve's face because she let out a small cry. Oh, God, no! Please, no! Steve held up his hand gently to Angela. What kind of incident, Colonel? Staff Sergeant Mitchell was on patrol 3 days ago when an IED went off near his vehicle. The studio was dead silent. Angela's family had gathered around her, holding her as she shook. The colonel continued, Mr. Harvey, I need you to know that Staff Sergeant Mitchell is alive. Steve let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He's alive? He is. He was injured, but he's alive. Mr. Harvey, the reason I'm calling you now during your show is because I have someone here who needs to talk to his wife. Can you put her on the phone? Steve's eyes filled with tears as he understood. He walked over to Angela, who was trembling. Angela, honey, he's okay. He's alive, and he wants to talk to you. Angela grabbed the phone with shaking hands. David? David, is that you? The voice that came through the phone was weak, but unmistakable. Steve had walked close enough that his mic picked it up. Hey, beautiful. I'm okay. I'm okay. Angela collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Oh my God, David. They said there was an incident. I thought. I know, baby. I know. But I'm okay. I've got some bumps and bruises, but I'm coming home. What? Angela's head snapped up. You're coming home? That's why the colonel called during your show, Angie. I wanted to tell you in front of everyone. I'm done. My tour's over. I got hurt bad enough that they're sending me home, but not so bad that I won't make a full recovery. Baby, I'm coming home. The entire studio was in tears. Steve had to wipe his eyes to continue listening. When? Angela asked, her voice desperate. When are you coming home? There was a pause on the line. Then David said something that made everyone gasp. Angie, baby, I need you to turn around. Angela turned slowly, and there, walking onto the Family Feud stage in full military uniform, with his left arm in a sling and bandages visible on his neck, was Staff Sergeant David Mitchell. The studio erupted. Angela scrambled to her feet and ran to her husband, jumping into his good arm. Their embrace was so powerful, so full of relief and love, that even the camera operators were crying. David held his wife with his one good arm, burying his face in her hair. I'm home, baby. I'm home for good. How? Angela pulled back to look at his face, touching it like she couldn't believe he was real. How are you here? David smiled through his own tears. The colonel pulled some strings. When they heard you were going to be on Family Feud, they expedited my medical transport. I've been at Walter Reed for 2 days getting cleared. Steve's producers helped coordinate everything. Steve stood there, holding the phone loosely, tears streaming down his face. He looked at his producer. You knew? Freeman nodded, emotional himself. We got the call yesterday from the Pentagon. They wanted to surprise her, but then we found out it was their daughter's birthday today, and we couldn't let this moment pass. Steve walked over to David and Angela, who were still holding each other, like they might disappear. Staff Sergeant Mitchell, Steve said, his voice thick with emotion. Welcome home, soldier. David turned to Steve, attempting to salute with his good arm. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Thank you for letting me surprise my wife. How bad? Steve asked gently, gesturing to David's injuries. David's expression was serious but grateful. IED hit our vehicle. I was lucky. Two of my guys weren't as lucky, but they're alive. Shrapnel in my shoulder and neck, some burns. But nothing that won't heal. Nothing that prayer and good doctors can't fix. And you're done? Steve asked. Really done with deployments? David nodded. Medical discharge. Honorable. 20 years of service. It's time for me to be a husband and father who's actually present. Angela was crying so hard she could barely speak.
Lizzie doesn't know. Oh my God, David, it's her birthday and she doesn't know you're home.
David grinned. Actually, about that. At that moment, a little girl's voice rang out from the side of the stage. Mommy? Everyone turned to see a beautiful 10-year-old girl with David's eyes and Angela's smile standing with David's mother, who had apparently been in on the surprise. Lizzie? Angela gasped. Mom, you brought Lizzie? Daddy? Lizzie's eyes went wide as she saw her father. Daddy! She ran across the stage and David dropped to his good knee to catch her. The impact clearly hurt his injured shoulder, but he didn't care. He held his daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. Happy birthday, princess, David whispered into her hair. Daddy's home. For real home? Lizzie asked, pulling back to look at his face. Or just visiting home? For real home, David confirmed. Forever home. The Mitchell family surrounded David in a group hug. Dorothy, his mother, was crying. His siblings were crying. Everyone in the studio was crying. Steve had to take off his glasses to wipe his eyes properly. Steve gave them a few moments, then gently approached with his microphone. David, if you don't mind me asking, what made you decide to surprise them this way? On national television? David stood up, keeping one arm around Angela and one hand on Lizzie's shoulder. I've watched my daughter grow up through a computer screen. I've seen my wife be strong for everyone else while falling apart in private. He paused, composing himself. I didn't just want to come home. I wanted the world to see what military families go through. I wanted everyone to know that my wife is the real hero. She's been a single parent, a mother and father, while I was gone. She's kept our family together, with nothing but faith and determination. Angela was shaking her head. You're the hero. You almost died serving our country. No, David said firmly. Heroes are the ones who wait. Heroes are the ones who explain to a little girl why Daddy can't be at her birthday party again. Heroes are the ones who go to bed alone, not knowing if they'll get that knock on the door. Baby, you're my hero. Steve was openly weeping now. In all my years of doing this show, I've never seen anything like this. He turned to face the cameras directly. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do something different today. This isn't about a game anymore. This is about honoring a family that has sacrificed more than most of us can imagine. Steve walked over to his producers. I don't care what it costs. Both families are getting the maximum prize. And the Mitchell family, we're going to do more than that. He turned back to David and Angela. David, what do you need? You're coming home injured. What does your family need? David shook his head. Mr. Harvey, we didn't come here for charity. We just wanted to play the game and maybe win some money for Lizzie's college fund. Stop, Steve said firmly. This isn't charity. This is America. Taking care of someone who spent 20 years taking care of America. Now what do you need? Angela spoke up quietly. The house. We're behind on the mortgage. With David gone, I had to cut back on work to be there for Lizzie and the medical bills from when Lizzie had pneumonia last year. Done, Steve said. We'll handle it. Mr. Harvey, you can't just... David started. Yes, I can, Steve interrupted. And I will. But it's not just me. It's everyone who's going to watch this. Every American who understands what you've sacrificed. Steve turned to the audience. How many of y'all have family in the military? About a third of the audience raised their hands. How many of y'all know someone who served? Almost every hand went up. That's what I thought, Steve said. This is our family. When one of us comes home hurt, we all step up. The Garcia family, who had been competing against the Mitchells, approached. The grandmother of the family, Maria Garcia, walked up to Angela and hugged her tightly. "My husband was in Vietnam," she said softly. "I know this pain. You're not alone, mija." What happened next was unprecedented in Family Feud history. Both families stood together, not as competitors, but as one united group. Steve abandoned the game format entirely. "You know what?" Steve announced. "We're throwing out the rules today. Both families are going to play fast money together. Whatever you win, you split. But here's the thing. My foundation is going to match it and multiply it by 10. The families were stunned. David tried to protest again, but Steve stopped him. "David, let me tell you something," Steve said. "I've been blessed. This show has been blessed. And sometimes God puts us in positions to be a blessing to others. Today is one of those days. You fought for us to have the freedom to do this show. The least we can do is fight for your family's future." They played fast money with both families helping each other. The energy was different, collaborative, supportive, emotional. When they won the maximum prize, Steve announced that with his foundation's contribution, each family would receive $100,000. But the story didn't end there. Steve turned to David. "Tell me about the two soldiers who were with you when the IED hit." David's expression darkened with pain. "Specialist Thompson and Private First Class Rodriguez. They're both at Walter Reed. Thompson lost his leg. Rodriguez, he's got traumatic brain injury. They're both kids, Mr. Harvey, 22 and 20 years old." Steve nodded. "Are their families taken care of?" David shook his head. "Thompson's got a young wife and a baby. Rodriguez, his parents don't speak much English. They're struggling to navigate the VA system." Steve made another decision on the spot. "We're taking care of them too. All of them. Mr. Harvey. All of them, David. Nobody gets left behind. Isn't that what you soldiers say?" David stood straighter, despite his injuries. "Yes, sir. Nobody gets left behind." The taping continued for another hour, but it wasn't really about Family Feud anymore. It became a celebration of service, sacrifice, and homecoming. Steve had David tell stories about his service, about the men and women he served with. Angela talked about the reality of being a military spouse, the late-night fears, the single parenting, the strength she had to find. Lizzie, the birthday girl, was asked what she wanted for her birthday now that she had her daddy home. Her answer made everyone cry again. "I just want him to stay. That's all I've ever wanted, just for Daddy to stay." When the episode aired 3 weeks later, it became the most-watched Family Feud episode in history. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Veterans organizations reached out. Other military families shared their stories. Donations poured in not just for the Mitchell family, but for Thompson and Rodriguez too. A tech billionaire who was also a veteran saw the episode and paid off the mortgages for all 3 families. A car company donated specially equipped vehicles for Thompson with his new prosthetic. A medical foundation arranged for Rodriguez to receive experimental treatment for his TBI. But perhaps the most moving response came from other military children. Hundreds of kids sent birthday cards to Lizzie, many sharing their own stories of missing their deployed parents. It became a movement of support that no one had anticipated. 3 months later, Steve had the Mitchell family back on his talk show. David's arm was out of the sling, though he still had some nerve damage that would be permanent. But he was smiling, really smiling. "How's it been being home?" Steve asked. David and Angela looked at each other with the kind of deep understanding that only comes from surviving trauma together. "It's been an adjustment," David admitted. 20 years of military life doesn't just turn off. I still wake up at 0400, still make my bed with military corners. Sometimes I forget I don't have to ask permission to leave the house." Angela squeezed his hand. "But he's here. Every morning when I wake up, he's here. Every night when Lizzie has a nightmare, her daddy is here to comfort her. That's all that matters." "And your injuries?" Steve asked gently. David flexed his left hand.
60% mobility in the arm. Some permanent nerve damage. But you know what? I can still hug my wife. I can still throw a ball with my daughter.
That's more than a lot of soldiers get. I'm grateful. Steve nodded. And Thompson and Rodriguez? David's face lit up. Thompson just had his first dance at his wedding with his new prosthetic. Rodriguez. The treatment is working. He recognized his parents last week for the first time since the explosion. These are miracles, Mr. Harvey. Miracles that happened because you gave us that platform. No, Steve corrected. Miracles that happened because America saw what needed to be done and stepped up. I just happened to be there when the phone rang. Steve turned to Lizzie. How's it been having Daddy home, sweetheart? Lizzie, now more comfortable with the cameras, grinned. Everyone laughed, including Angela. And he helps with homework now, Lizzie continued. And he was there for my school play. I was a tree, but he said I was the best tree in the whole forest. And you know what the best part is? What's that, baby? Steve asked. When people ask me what my daddy does, I don't have to say he's far away being brave anymore. I can just say he's home being my dad. There wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Steve asked about the response from other military families. Angela spoke up. We've received thousands of messages, not asking for anything, just sharing their stories, letting us know we're not alone. We've started a support group for military families in our area. David speaks at the VA about transition. It's like our story gave other people permission to tell theirs. That moment on Family Feud, David said, when you took that phone call, it wasn't just about surprising my family. It became about showing America that we're still here. We're still fighting battles, just different ones. PTSD, physical injuries, financial struggles, family reintegration. The war doesn't end when we come home. Steve leaned forward. What do you want people to know? David thought for a moment. That behind every yellow ribbon, every Support Our Troops bumper sticker, there should be actual support. Check on your military families. Not just when they're deployed, but especially when they come home. The transition is harder than people think. A casserole, a lawn mowed, a play date for the kids while a spouse goes to a VA appointment. These things matter. Angela added, and for the spouses holding it down at home, you're not alone. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to admit it's hard. Strength isn't pretending everything's fine. Strength is admitting you need help and accepting it when it's offered. Steve then revealed something that hadn't been made public. You know, after your episode aired, we created something. The Family Feud Military Family Fund. Every episode now, a portion goes to helping military families in crisis. Your story didn't just change your life. It changed how we do business. David stood up and, despite Steve's protests, saluted him. Mr. Harvey, you gave me the chance to surprise my family, to show the world what they mean to me. But more than that, you gave us dignity in our struggle. You didn't treat us like victims. You treated us like the Americans we are, deserving of respect and support. That means everything. As the interview ended, Steve had one more surprise. By the way, Lizzie, I heard you just had another birthday. 11 years old now? Lizzie nodded excitedly. Well, we can't let that pass without a celebration. The curtain opened to reveal a birthday cake and presents, but also something more. Thompson and Rodriguez were there with their families. The surprise reunion was emotional and beautiful. Rodriguez, speaking slowly but clearly despite his ongoing recovery, said, Staff Sergeant Mitchell saved us that day. He pulled us both out of the vehicle before the secondary explosion. We wouldn't be here without him. Thompson, standing on his prosthetic, added, This man is the definition of no one left behind. And Mr. Harvey, you showed us that America believes in that too. The family spent the rest of the show together, not as guests, but as a military family reunited. They shared stories, laughed, cried, and celebrated not just survival, but life itself. 6 months after the original Family Feud episode, the Mitchell family had found their new normal. David was working as a counselor for returning veterans. Angela had gone back to school to become a nurse, inspired by the medical team that saved her husband. Lizzie was thriving, no longer the girl whose daddy was always gone, but the girl whose daddy came home. The phone call that interrupted Family Feud that day did more than reunite one family. It reminded a nation that supporting our troops means supporting them long after they come home. It showed that sometimes the most important battles are fought not on foreign soil, but in living rooms, bedrooms, and family dinner tables across America. Steve Harvey later said in an interview, "In 30 years of television, I've had a lot of memorable moments. But that phone call, that family, that moment when we all remembered what really matters, that changed me. It reminded me why I do what I do. Not for ratings or laughs, but for the chance to maybe, just maybe, make a real difference in someone's life." The episode became required viewing at military family readiness groups. It was shown at VA hospitals. It became more than television. It became a symbol of hope for military families struggling with reintegration. But perhaps the most lasting impact was the simplest one. A little girl got her daddy home for her birthday. A wife got her husband back. A soldier got to finally rest. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won on battlefields. Sometimes they're won on game show stages when someone has the courage to answer a phone call that changes everything. Steve Harvey stopped everything when his producer handed him that phone. What he heard left everyone sobbing. But more importantly, it left everyone understanding that heroes come home, wounded but not broken. That families survive separation but need support in reunion. And that sometimes the best surprise isn't winning a game show. It's simply coming home. The Mitchell family still watches Family Feud every night. It's their tradition now. But they don't watch it for the game. They watch it to remember the day their lives changed, the day America embraced them, and the day a phone call brought Daddy home for good. And Steve Harvey? He keeps a photo from that day in his dressing room. It's not a posed shot. It's the moment David walked onto that stage, the moment Angela saw him, the moment Lizzie realized her daddy was home. It reminds him that television at its best isn't about entertainment. It's about connection, compassion, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's about miracles. The phone call that stopped Family Feud didn't just bring a soldier home. It brought America together in support of those who serve. And that, more than any prize money or rating success, is the true victory of that remarkable day when Steve Harvey answered a call that changed everything.